They say hell is a merciless place where one goes to suffer for eternity due to their sins in life. Well, they never told me about the machine gun. Yes, thankfully in this hell we've been granted a sword, a spear, a shield, bow, claws, and a machine gun. If I was to escape my fate, which I definitely hadn't done before, I'd need to prepare. Failure was not an option. Not because I was confident, but because I can respawn. The journey was perilous, yet I did not falter. In the face of fear, we press on, because there was no greater fear than failing to start. To start, I played around with a few weapons, test out their durability, their versatility. Eventually, I decided to go with the sword. My first mistake, as the sword is not a gun. My goal was to escape, so naturally I increased the difficulty for myself. The main difficulty being I had set a timer on myself. Only 5 minutes to escape each floor. My friends, this wasn't a simple race to the finish. This was a race against death. With that out of the way, I entered Tartarus. Despite the flowing red river of what I could only assume was blood, it was a fairly comforting place for me. Adversaries were timid down here. I was also timid, but I started with a damage buff, so it balanced out. Now before I carry on with the tale of my daring attempt to escape the underworld, as I said, in order to escape hell I'd need to prepare well. My sword has a secondary ability. When hit with a special attack, enemies will drop arrows, called casts in this game, that I had hit them with earlier. This meant I could use powerful casts in quick succession for more damage. With that in mind, I quickly dispatched the enemies here. As the timer was ticking down, I ran away from the exit and went fishing instead. I caught a Elysium. It was very nice. As I continued through rooms in Tartarus, I was getting nervous. No gods had shown up to empower me. Often the key to success down here is to acquire abilities to power up the main character, which is me. However, the reward for each room is random. Facing the fact my luck wasn't quite getting me the upgrades I wanted, I went down to see the primordial being, Chaos. They offered me a trade. I get no money for 3 enemy encounters, but afterwards, I hit 50% harder. Eventually, I was forced onto the warpath, quite literally. Ares, the god of war, would be my first boon, which is what an upgrade is. Fortunately, he's a pretty good looking guy. Unfortunately, he's the god of war. Thankfully, he had a pretty good boon for me to take, powering up my special attack, which at this point was my main damage dealer. Not much happened in the rest of Tartarus. I got my ass handed to me a few times, but otherwise I did alright. As I approached the door in this room, I knew what awaited me on the other side were the Furies. I could have said furries, but we all knew that was coming. The fight started in their favor, viciously swinging and swiping at me. Losing too much health for comfort, and having almost 0 relevant boons, I felt it was time to drop a boulder on their heads. Thankfully, it's a special boulder, who drops health items when he appears. I aim my always fresh, never frozen sub, and continue the fight. Thankfully, Boldy had really helped me out damage-wise in the fight, though things were still tense. My health was quickly being shaved down again, and the timer was ticking ever closer to 0. I had to end this. With the furries finished off, I could take a moment of respite, reflecting on my journey so far. Only 2 floors left to reach the surface and escape. As soon as I had left the room, I was greeted with lava rivers. This is Asphodel, a place of searing heat and bones. Lots of bones. Perhaps too many bones. I disregarded the vessel of bones and began my trek. After clearing the first area, a special reward appeared in the preview for the next room. Hermes, the god of swiftness, is a rare and powerful encounter. Well, he's guaranteed, but I don't want to get into the tech. Suffice to say, I took my chances with getting a good upgrade from the messenger of the gods himself. Once I arrived in the arena for this room, I heard some bells chime out. Thanatos was looking to beat me in a competition. He who eliminates the most enemies wins. I could tell he was serious as he wasn't staring at me from a 3/4 view as per usual. Regardless of the circumstance, I press on and proceed to absolutely demolish him with 0 fear of potentially losing. With that wrapped up, I pick up a dodge upgrade from Hermes, which gives me a 30% chance to negate the damage of an attack that connects with me. I figured at this point if I'm going to get hit, I may as well keep rolling the dice. The rooms continued, with me getting chipped out of my health little by little. In my rushing state, I see an upgrade available from Artemis, the god I was hoping would be the key to my victory. I zipped over as quickly as possible and entered. My second mistake. I hadn't considered who I would be fighting in the next room. Here come the 4 witches to ruin my day. On literal level, they boast heavy projectile fire and very disconnected room layout. On a technical level, a big pain in the ass. In an attempt to kill one of the witches, I dashed directly onto lava. I then proceeded to stand there for at least 2 seconds, wondering why my screen kept flashing red. Once I collected myself, I killed the witch and immediately stood in the lava again. I finally killed the last witch and my situation begins to look bleak. The deck has been stacked against me. I reach out to Artemis in the hopes that she could bless me with a good boon. The epic true shot upgrade. Exactly what I'd been looking for since I began. Without hesitation, I pick it, feeling like things were finally beginning to look up. I could save this run. 2 rooms later, I tried to get on a skull raft from the lava side and died. Thankfully, I have extra lives, called Death Defies. I was really hoping to save them as a last resort for the much harder challenges I'd be facing up ahead, though. A little bit later, I entered the boss room of Asphodel. It was time to take on the Bone Hydra himself, Lerny. That's his nickname. It fits. This fight went badly. It went badly. Lerny attacked me with several mini-me's of himself, and I continuously got hit by strays which kept chipping away at my health. Though in the end I survived, perhaps that alone wasn't enough. Still we carry on, into the land of champions and warriors. Elysium. It's much brighter, friendlier, except that's a lie because these idiots exist. These enemies will respawn as the larger versions of themselves if you don't eliminate them quickly. Unfortunately for me, the timer does not care. Time waits for no man. I was no exception, unless it's in menus. Time does wait for menus. Moving through Elysium, I wasn't finding much good, but I took whatever I could get. I prayed out to the gods that they might bless me with what I need to survive. Eventually, the gods heard my request. They ignored me, and then for fun decided to make me pick favorites. Obviously, I picked Artemis. As Poseidon was pissed and sending waves to crash into me, enemies began mauling me, I burned up another life. Things were getting too close for comfort. I barely managed to succeed. Poseidon now decided he's okay with me after he literally killed me. He allowed me to pick one of his boons. Knowing the odds were stacked against me, I picked more damage for it being the simplest option. As I stood between the doors of fate, the gods' icons appeared. Instinctively, I went for Ares, as he's already one of the gods I've been getting boons from. I hadn't noticed the skull icon, which meant there was a mini-boss in the room, and a powerful one too. As I entered the room, I spotted the stylish yet sleek Asterius. I knew what came next. Almost instantly, he burned through my third and final death defy. I only had one chance left. I began to play it safe. There was no telling what attack would. Asterius, in an attempt to land on top of me, was stopped mid-jump by a statue, causing him to land and create a shockwave on the ground. I got fucked, I said out loud. As I respawned back in the bloody bath of Asphodel, I corrected a simple mistake. This time, I brought a gun. Despite the aching pains Asterius would have left me, I carried on with new determination in my wake. I also reduced the difficulty. There was truly no stopping me this time. Aphrodite was the one to bless me this run, making my laser pink. How nice. I laid waste to everything that challenged me. No enemy would stand in my way. This was my time to redeem myself. Room after room I traveled, making short work of Tartarus. The gods continued to empower me as I finally reached the Furies again. This time Alecto was looking to fight. While she did manage to scratch me a few times, what good is it when you're up against Hellfire? My return to Asphodel was also brief, having a run-in with the tree like Eurydice, who granted me even more buffs. I felt the peak was coming. Could this be the run? Thanatos also appeared, and as he stared into my eyes through the monitor, I knew a fierce battle was about to take place. A visit to Chaos and a short trip in the luxurious Skull Cruiser later, and I found myself once again ready to face Lernie. Taking care of him was easy enough with the power of Hellfire. I'll stop, but really, things were looking good. Finally, we've made it back to the promised land, Elysium, this time with more range and explosions to deal with these things. I just really want to kill these guys. While traveling through the rooms once again, the gods wanted to see who I liked more. Unfortunately for Demeter, this arc is about comebacks and Warpath, so I went with Ares first. As I collected another boon from Demeter, I could feel myself becoming a true force of nature. I stopped at nothing to prove I could escape. Now Astræus blocked my path once again, this time without the armor because I turned that off. The fight begins anew, shooting and lunging, jumping and smashing. It was truly a fight amongst us warriors. The Bull of Minos once again proved a worthy opponent, but in the end, what could stop a blazing hurricane? Okay, I'll stop with the titles. Having taken my revenge, there was only one obstacle left here, the final bout versus the champions of Elysium. As I entered the Colosseum, I was greeted by Theseus, the one who had 2 or 0 ships, depending on your stance. Asterius was also there. The battle begins and the 3 of us are off. Damage was laid heavy on both sides, with me on the brink of death. Eventually, I did die, but quickly recovered and managed to remove Asterius from the fight. Theseus was not pleased that I'd killed his friend. I was not pleased that Theseus was still in my way. With only one foe to stand against me, I unleashed everything I had on him. Hellfire, explosions, Demeter's chilly Sunday breeze. Theseus, however, did not falter, giving it his all, calling upon gods and using his trusty spear to try and strike me down, a true warrior to the end. Shoutouts to the day ones. Perhaps it's true what they say. A man can only become a man after having faced both victory and defeat. Entering the River Styx, I knew my hardest challenge yet awaited me. I knew preparation wouldn't do me any good. I simply had to trust in my strength and skill. I cleared the obstacles in my way, and as the light shone through the window, I stepped outside. The snow-covered arena was accented only by the powerful figure of Hades himself. As he calls his weapon, we begin. A fight to the death between titans. Hades was no pushover, even with my enhanced abilities. I had to use everything I could to keep the battle in my favor. He summoned minions through flaming skulls, doing whatever he could to keep me down, and as his health finally dropped to 0, he took a breath. Then, he stood, and began to fight again. This was his last stand. As he fired lasers, I was forced to hide and attack from a distance. Like a dance, we continued weaving in and out of each other's ranges, until finally, the god of the dead was no more. I picked up my rewards and walked off to the surface, knowing in the end, there is no escape. Subscribe if you want to catch my future narratives. Thanks for watching.